Who is a person that everyone thought was crazy, but they ended up being right? Alfred Wegener, who first proposed continental drift, what would ultimately become plate tectonics. Geologists of the day considered him an outsider and rejected his theory. Ignaz Semmelweis. In 1846, Semmelweis proposed the idea that hand-washing could prevent the spread of disease in hospitals. He was ridiculed during his time, sent to a mental asylum, and died forgotten by his peers. Ludwig Boltzmann. His equations and formulas explained the physical properties of matter, but as it went against the then accepted laws of physics, he was ridiculed and ignored for years while fighting for atom theory to be accepted. He took his own life just 3 years before Ernest Rutherford discovered the nucleus of an atom, proving Boltzmann's theory. Barry James Marshall was one of the scientists who discovered that the bacteria H. pylori causes stomach ulcers. However, getting people to believe it was difficult. It was thought that lifestyle and excessive stomach acid were the main factor that lead to ulcers, so when he suggested that a bacterial infection could cause it, no one believed him. In response, he infected himself with H. pylori by drinking cultures, which in turn gave himself stomach ulcers, and then treated the infection. He and Robin Warren received a Nobel Prize for this discovery. Lindy Chamberlain Creighton. A dingo really did eat her baby. Jose Canseco was one of the first players to openly discuss how prevalent steroid use was in the 90s-2000s. And people dismissed his claims as being from a player on decline just trying to stay relevant. My grandma. She insisted people kept stealing her newspaper, and specifically said it was someone in a white van. Grandma was always a little off, so we just thought she was paranoid and had a bad delivery person. Until one day my mom and I are driving past her house and a white van in front of us stopped, stole my grandma's newspaper, and drove off. Grandma wasn't crazy after all, at least not about that. Some of the elderly patients with dementia in a home in my city kept complaining they weren't given food. Everyone thought they must have forgotten that they'd already eaten, as people with dementia sometimes do. Nope. Turns out some pieces of shit nursing staff didn't always give everyone their meals, amongst other abuse. John Lydon of the Sex Pistols tried to warn the world about the crimes of Jimmy Savile in an interview in 1978, and was banned from appearing on the BBC for his trouble. Martha Mitchell, wife of John Mitchell, Nixon's Attorney General. Martha kept saying that there was hanky-panky going on, but nobody listened to her. Topher Grace got a lot of flack on that 70s show for being antisocial and cold towards his castmates. Turns out they were all massive assholes. Christine Collins, famously portrayed by Angelina Jolie in the movie Changeling. After her son was abducted, the police found him months later and reunited them. But Christine was adamant that it wasn't her son Walter and was an imposter. Even though she had evidence to prove it, she was temporarily committed by the officer in charge of the case, and even after the kid admitted he lied and wasn't Walter, it still took over a week to release Christine. Writer Ernest Hemingway was convinced the FBI had him under surveillance. His friends and family told him he was nutters. Until some unsealed records a while back proved that he actually was being followed, had his phones bugged, etc. The lady who got burned from McDonald's coffee. If I recall, she was so injured she lost 20 of her body weight while hospitalized. McDonald's was later discovered to be intentionally selling nuclear hot coffee, because you couldn't drink it quickly and thus ordered fewer refills. Rose McGowan. She was talking crazy shit about people following her and ex-Mossad agents being involved. She was dismissed as insane. Turns out, Weinstein had an army of spies he had following victims to keep them quiet, including the exact people she had described. Barry Marshall. Remember in the 80s, when everyone seemed to have ulcers, and they were basically treated with Tums? Marshall was a researcher who discovered that H. pylori bacteria caused ulcers, not just too much acid in the stomach. Unfortunately, no one would believe him. So he literally documented himself drinking the bacteria, getting ulcers, and successfully treating them with antibiotics. Courtney Love, granted she's still a bit nutty, but she was right on about Weinstein. Topher Grace was seen as just some holier-than-thou actor who didn't want to be friends with the rest of the cast. And now we know why. Corey Feldman. Though I'd argue his current craziness is a direct result of the truth. I forgot her name, but a dingo did in fact eat her baby. I don't remember his name, but a man on one of the planes that crashed into the Twin Towers called police and told them that there were suspicious people on his plane. They didn't take him seriously. The people he saw turned out to be 2 of the 4 hijackers on the plane. That dude who suggested that it might be a good idea to wash your hands before performing surgery. Galileo Galilei. Nikola Tesla. Louis Pasteur. Other scientists thought he was crazy, saying that tiny little creatures we couldn't even see could be the cause of disease. Gary Webb, the San Jose Mercury news reporter that uncovered the CIA link to crack cocaine into Los Angeles. The government used other newspapers to discredit him. A few years later, he was found in his home with 2 bullet holes in his head, and the coroner ruled it a suicide. He was right. Shout out to John Brown, who actually was super crazy but also totally right. Harry Markopolos. No one believed him when he said Madoff was running a Ponzi scheme. Hannibal Buress. He was a first prominent voice to call out Bill Cosby. At a time where in the black community, saying bad shit about Cosby is like being a Catholic and bad-mouthing the Pope. The many British postal workers fired and prosecuted for stealing. Many were lifelong employees. Some committed suicide. This went on for almost 2 decades. Spoiler: it was a surveillance software glitch that went ignored for years. They were all innocent. I can't remember his name, but during a huge cholera outbreak, he proposed the theory that it came from the water based on where the cases were. He wasn't believed until a long time later when it was proven to be the water. Leave Britney alone girl, formerly Guy edit. Someone told me this was a girl. I certainly didn't mean to misgender. But someone else said Guy. So, whatever she desires to be called. They were right. Everyone, including me, made fun of Mitt Romney for saying in his 2012 debate with Obama that Russia was the USA's one geopolitical foe, but he was absolutely right. People who said Roe v. Wade was under threat. Ignaz Semmelweis theorized that the reason infant mortality was so high is because there are tiny creatures on our hands. He would say that by simply washing your hands before delivering a baby will lower the chance of the infant's death. He died in a mental institution. Glenda Cleveland. She tried to stop Jeffrey Dahmer, and instead, the police believed him over her. To this day, I believe that it was because she and Dahmer's victim, Konorak Sinthasomphon, were POC and Dahmer was white. MLK's family blamed the US government for his assassination. People thought they were crazy, but they sued the government for it and won. Jerry was right, the puffy shirt really did make you look like a pirate. The dude who swore for years he could hear people speaking Yiddish in the walls of his apartment in NYC. Turns out people from a nearby synagogue were constructing a secret tunnel under his building. Mitt Romney in the 2012 presidential debate when he called Russia our one geopolitical enemy. Everyone laughed at him. Corey Feldman. Will never forgive Barbara Walters for the way she behaved when he was talking about the abuse he suffered, which led to the death of his friend. Courtney Love and Sean Young. They called out Weinstein in the 1980s. Britney Spears. Sinead O'Connor. Cassandra. The Dixie Chicks. Now just the Chicks spoke out against Bush and the blatant oil grab in the Middle East. They were lambasted and removed from media seemingly overnight. When the truth finally came out, they performed not ready to make nice, and it was awesome.